You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers move to 5-0 on the season by beating Lindenwood 73-53. In a game that had some good, some bad, kind of felt a little bit like the Army game from a few years ago there, honestly, for a while. I mean, the color of the jerseys and then the performance of the home team. But Indiana was able to regroup in the second half. Tucker DeVries just went nuclear there for about 10 minutes, scoring on possession after possession after possession, making all kinds of shots. And Indiana ends up winning the game by 20. Now, look, in a game where you're facing a team ranked in the 300s, your analytical expectation is to win by 29. No one's going to be overly excited by only winning by 20. And so there's going to be a lot of things to break down here, and certainly a lot of things for Coach DeVries to break down in terms of improvements. But look, a win is a win. Indiana moves to 5-0, and also a lot of good things to talk about, which we will do on the show. I'm your host, Jerod Morris, here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and Andy Bottoms. We will break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start the show the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for the banner moment tonight, I'm going back to early in the second half, the 16:43 mark. Indiana calls a timeout after Lindenwood scores a bucket to open the second half on an 8-0 run. It was a 6-point game at that point. You could definitely, even just from the TV, you could feel the tension in the air at Assembly Hall. But Indiana regrouped after that timeout, immediately went on a 16-3 run that pushed the lead back up to whatever it was after that point, up to 19, I believe. And really, it was keyed by a couple plays by Connor Enright, who comes right out, makes a great pass to a cutting Lamar Wilkerson for a layup, then got a steal on the next possession that led to a Tatum Connerway bucket. And what I really liked about that sequence for Indiana was just the ability to refocus and pick up the energy within the game. I'll be curious to see what Coach DeVries' comments are in the post-game press conference, but, just watching just kind of the energy, the attention to detail was noticeably different in this game in the first half and in the opening, moments of the second half for Indiana. And that is something that, in previous, incarnations, previous seasons of Indiana basketball, when we've seen that happen, it has typically been a 40-minute thing. And it's been hard for Indiana to pull it out of kind of those doldrums within the game. And so I think that ability to refocus, pick up the energy, pick up the execution in game and dominate a team that you should dominate, even if it was for kind of a smaller portion of the time than we would have liked. That's a sign of the maturity that we've been talking about with this team. And obviously having a guy like Tucker DeVries who can just go off and start making a bunch of shots to extend that lead is important. But it really was kind of a team-wide refocusing, keyed by those plays by Connor Enright. You saw Sam Alexis really make a lot of hustle plays, and that seemed to kind of get the team back going again. And they were able to, get the convincing 20-point win at the end of the day. All right, now let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Home Field Apparel, wear one for the team.
And our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 10th season sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their 4th as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. As you know, no one has a larger collection of vintage IU apparel than Home Field Apparel, and you need to be going there all the time and subscribe to the text messages and subscribe to the email alerts and all that, because they're always adding new stuff and they're always sending out deals. I have their app, and I got a text message and a notification earlier today of a big 35% off sale. So immediately went to the website because I've had my eye on the black IU hat with the block IU logo, which I just think is a really sharp looking hat, kind of a little change of pace type hat. Bought 2 of them, one for myself, one for my brother. And, just going through there and seeing all the other shirts. I love the shirt with Signetti with his arms up. And they just released some new ones with the flying eye, some new football gear. So, I mean, with so much happening with the football program, with the basketball programs, it's a great Christmas to buy IU stuff for your friends and family members. And there's no better place to go than Home Field Apparel to do that. Visit their website, homefieldapparel.com, download their app, follow them on Twitter, get the text alerts because you don't want to miss those flash sales. And if you don't happen to have a code at that moment, and it's your first time buying, you can use our promo code HOME23. That'll get you 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay. Well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. And we will start with Andy Bottoms, your Bottoms line on this Indiana victory.
Yeah, a really sluggish start through the first half when shots really weren't going down and just seemed to kind of like, sleepwalk through the game. I don't know. Ryan's not here to tell us if the 6 p.m. tip is the new noon tip on a weekend. I don't know. It's tough to say.
Tell them where he is, Andy. Tell them where Andy is while we're doing this.
Ryan. Yeah, Ryan is apparently at Disneyland, which was
riding the teacups at Disneyland at this moment.
So, but I thought the end right stretch you mentioned was a real turning point, and I really thought Sam Alexis was a big spark as well. There was a stretch, a couple plays after that, and my sheet that I tracked this just closed while I was trying to pull this up. But he gets fouled, makes a couple free throws, goes down at the other end, ends up getting fouled, had a good block out, and ended up getting fouled, and that was the start of a IU scored on 9 straight possessions where they scored 20 points, starting with those 4 free throws in a row that he made. And in the midst of that, as I texted you guys, DeVries scored 13 points on 5 possessions, which I hear is good. Capped off with the heat check banked in 3 from the top of the key. But that was really the stretch for IU. I don't know. Yeah, it's so that was really where they took control of the game back, and that kind of energy. I think it started with Enright, and then Alexis really brought that, and then you started to see Conroy kind of pick it up a little bit. It was just like they were kind of sleepwalking through a good chunk of the game, and I think I saw somebody online say it looked like they kind of had heavy legs, which doesn't make sense. I do think I don't think that's what it is either, but I do think there's a lot of guys who've been logging a good number of minutes, but I also think this seemed like a team the last couple games against inferior opponents just had trouble really getting up for that challenge. Certainly hope that's not the case come Tuesday when Kansas State comes to town and some of these bigger games. But overall result not too far off of what you probably would have wanted it to be from an analytics standpoint, and really thought that stretch in the second half is what it didn't flip the game, because it never really felt like it was out of IU's control, but it was really where they asserted their dominance in that stretch in the second half.
Coach, it is Tonsoni time. What's on your mind after this one?
Yeah, a win's a win, but this was a pretty lackluster effort, I thought, especially offensively. I thought defensively, Indiana did a good job, but the flaws of this team were kind of exposed a little bit tonight, and that's something that they got to work on. So defense, I thought, was outstanding, except the rebounding. They gave up 17 offensive rebounds. That cannot continue. And I think on offense, they just were stagnant and not moving. And you saw in the first half, there was a stretch of good offensive play after a timeout. There was another good stretch of offensive play after another timeout. What was consistent about the play after timeouts? They got put into some sort of set or action back cut, I think under the direction of Coach DeVries. So while, this was just a slug of a game, there are some things to look at. Like, Coach understands that, and he knew that they weren't moving. And so that leads me to believe, like, they were going to play concepts these last 2 games. They weren't going to run through their playbook or put anything out there because they want to save stuff, and even for Kansas State and some of that. So they played concepts. And sometimes as a coach, when you allow players to play through their motion offense is what I'm talking about, or their concepts, the negative is standing around, too much one-on-one. Coach DeVries mentioned that in an incarnate word, players trying to win the game each possession. And I thought that's what happened tonight. And then you saw a timeout, and then you saw some cutting, and then you saw some moving and sharing the basketball, and then you build up another lead, and then they got stagnant. So this team right now plays a little bit to its competition, which is concerning. You don't want that. You want 40 minutes of good basketball, and tonight was not 40 minutes of good basketball. It was about maybe 20 minutes of good offensive basketball, and about, I thought all night they put really good defensive pressure except for the rebounding. So, yeah, which team is it? The first 3 games or the last 2? We'll find out on Tuesday night against Kansas State. But I have a belief that there's some things within the game that people handled adversity, right? I thought Lamar Wilkerson played great defense in the second half, and he couldn't hit anything. And so you got to hang your head on that. Like, his offense didn't affect his defense, and coaches will say that too. Who are you when the ball's not going in? Well, I saw something in Lamar Wilkerson tonight that he's going to be a pretty good player for us when the ball's not going in other areas. I saw a coach who recognized stagnant offense and got the team moving enough to build a 20-point lead. You don't want to excuse the bad things that happened tonight, but there are some positive things that you can build on.
All right, well, it's time for 40 minutes in Bloomington. Let's go back to that first half, which Indiana led by 14, 16 at halftime. I don't remember what, 34-18. So up 16 at the half. And, again, for the second straight game, Indiana just really not shooting very well. And, Lamar Wilkerson, clearly was kind of the biggest culprit of that tonight. But as you said, Coach, found other ways to get involved, and it didn't seem to affect him on defense. And I never really felt like he was forcing shots, which you sometimes see. I mean, he took a lot of shots, but they were good looks. He just wasn't making them. So what did you see, from Lamar Wilkerson from an offensive perspective? Was this just a good shooter having an off night, or was there anything just about the shots he was taking or where he was getting them that you noticed?
Well, you want your best shooters to take a lot of shots, and you want them to shoot their way into a hot night. So you're not upset with that. But I thought the shot selection early was not good. And I think that led to a lot of one-on-one play and a lot of just standing and watching, and then late shot clock or whatever. And I thought he had some of those. And then once he started missing, I think he started, feeling it. And coach subbed him out twice after shots that I thought were somewhat questionable. And, coach said, I don't care where they take him from and when they do that, but there is a limit, right? There is a limit. And we have Indiana has enough offensive firepower to go elsewhere. So I thought his misses were just a part of the overall lackluster movement of ball and people tonight that we hadn't seen in the first three games. And Andy, you put in a quote there in our private chat from DeVries, the player tonight, about enthusiasm. And so they don't feel like they really played with the intensity that coach said. You're going to walk out of Assembly Hall knowing we play hard and play focused. And so I think that's going to be a point of emphasis. But I think the offense was just not moving at all. And so when you do that, you're not going to get wide open shots. And you're even going to, then when you do get wide open shots, you're not ready to shoot. This was a game where they weren't into what they needed to do from that offensive concept until they went into the actions directed by the coach. The baseline out of bounds, they ran good stuff to get shots. So, this team bounces back. They did bounce back in Puerto Rico. They bounced back in other games and against Baylor and other things. This team was bad, but I don't think the selection was good. But that's not like players being selfish. That's just bad offense then leading to quick forced shots and trying too hard to get a basket to go in.
Yeah, I really thought one of those stretches I'm assuming you're alluding to, coming out of a timeout, they really came out and ran a lot of backdoor stuff and pulled the offense up even higher and let guys cut in behind, because Lindenwood was really overplaying a little bit and
trapping.
It was either nobody wanted to or could, and I saw a number of people online talking about, this team just doesn't have anybody that could really create their own shot. And that was kind of evident in places where the offense was struggling. And I think that was true. It just didn't seem like anybody really wanted to try to put their head down and go to the basket. Connerway did that a little bit at times, but and Wilkerson, when he's done that, really continues to struggle finishing around the basket a little bit. And so, but you did see when they did get things moving, either through those back cuts or driving baseline and having somebody drift to the corner. I think Dorn hit one that way, Enright hit one that way, where they were able to get inside and kick it out. The times when the offense looked like what it had looked like over the first few games, it was fine. But it was a lot of, as Sean Morris pointed out on the broadcast, not a lot of hard cuts, just kind of going through the motions of what they were doing as opposed to really, cutting hard. Whether that was thinking through the opponent, like, well, I'll turn it on when I need to, or I'm not really sure what the mindset was, but that's what it looked like to me, at least.
So to say, go to that point you were making there, that was from 12. The game went from 12-4 to 25-11. Bailey gets a side pick and roll at the rim. And then DeVries gets a pass from Bailey for a 3, and then DeVries gets a roll and hits Enright for a 3. And so they score 13 points in the next 4-minute segment. And the ball went to the high post, right? So instead of just running the ball screen and doing stuff, it was the high post entry, and they have action on both sides. Sometimes it's a flare, sometimes it's a flare and a rescreen and a curl, sometimes it's a pass and chase into a ball screen. But they went to the high post entry. I wrote that down because that's got people moving instead of going one-on-one, and that's exactly the time period there, Andy, that you were talking between the 12 and the 8 minute mark. And then they kind of scored again, Sicily a 3, Dorn a 3, and then they stopped in the last 4 minutes again and got stagnant. And that they only scored
last 4 minutes was terrible.
Right?
Yeah, they got outscored 4-1 in the last.
So it's all tied to movement.
4 minutes, and you went from a 19-point lead that you really could have built on. You score 1 point over the last 8 trips, and it ends up being 16, and then you come out and give up an 8-0, 10-0 run to start the half, and you're in more of a dogfight than you intended to be. But yeah, it just seemed like when they really were adamant about what they wanted to do, it was effective, and then they would just kind of have a lull, which, again, I don't know if you attribute that more to the opponent or to something else, but that's what it felt like, is that when they wanted to turn it on and were focused about what they wanted to do, they got the shots they wanted and made them, and when they didn't, it was settling.
Lingering on the first half just a minute, you look at the points per possession for Lindenwood, 0.514, which is an astounding number. And I think, wow, Indiana must have played elite defense. And I do think there was some good defense there. But part of good defense is finishing the possession. And Indiana gave up 13 offensive rebounds in the first half. Like, it's almost impossible to give up 13 offensive rebounds and hold your opponent to 0.5 points per possession. Lindenwood in that first half, 6 of 22 on layups, 0 for 10 from three-point range. And so I think, as much as, I do think Indiana was solid defensively, when these games have gone bad for Indiana, it's usually because the other team makes a lot of shots. And I think Indiana was really fortunate tonight that Lindenwood couldn't finish and couldn't make shots. And so I think, that number that, for the first half, was kind of a combination of decent to solid defense by Indiana, but also Lindenwood just not being able to take advantage of the opportunities that they were given. Now, to Indiana's credit, they cleaned up the rebounding in the second half. I think a lot of that credit goes to Sam Alexis, both for the rebounds he got and just the tone he set. But Coach, 13 offensive rebounds in the first half. Indiana really, I think, dodged a bullet with the game not being closer at halftime.
They, again, I thought their first shot defense was really good. The ball pressure by Conaway and Enright, and what they're trying to do defensively from a scheme situation is force twos. And sometimes teams will hit those twos, like you said, and sometimes they won't. This team wasn't talented enough to hit a lot. But this should have been a 30, 40-point ball game if Indiana plays offense the right way or they rebound. But they were standing. Once the shot went up, there was a lot of standing and not pursuing the basketball. You also have to give Lindenwood a little bit of credit. They had some quick twitch athletes that were just getting off the ground real quick. But then you have to match that intensity by going and getting it. I think you saw Wilkerson and Enright more involved on the defensive end in the second half, fixing it, as we'll get to the second half here. And you saw two-hand rebounding by Alexis. So it's one thing to block out and do that, but the pursuit of the basketball was not there for Indiana. And that again, how you get a team to play in all facets of the game with intensity is the secret to coaching, right? And sometimes when you're playing a Lindenwood and you have, 18 to 22-year-old men out there, you'll have aspects. At least I thought they played hard on the first defensive set, the first shot defense all night long. They had some offensive periods of time. But, yeah, there were too many pockets, whether it be the rebounding or the standing on offense, especially in that first half, that showed this team wasn't as locked in as they need to. And that's 2 games in a row, and that is a concern.
Yeah, what's crazy when you look at the numbers, there was one stretch in I think it was between maybe the 16-minute mark and the 12-minute mark or somewhere around there. Lindenwood had 11 points on 6 possessions. So that means the other 30 possessions of the first half, they scored 7 points. But like Coach said, the rebounding was a part of that. One of those possessions they scored, and they got 4 cracks at it. And some of that is Alexis was blocking shots, and but that you can't explain away 13 of them. And I know the play that I'm thinking of happened early in the second half, but it's 3-on-1, and the Lindenwood guy is the guy who comes away with the ball, where you've kind of blocked out, but then nobody went to get it. And this team's just not blockout fundamentals are great, but at some point you got to go get it. This team's just not athletic enough to be able to just kind of rely on the ball falling to them. And I think, like you said, they were doing a decent job of being in position, but just couldn't really secure the ball more often than not in that stretch. And I think we're far enough into the season to know that can get better. And Tucker DeVries, said, just got to play harder, to be honest, but an emphasis in practice will get it fixed. So like they understand that it's a problem, but I think probably have seen enough games to know that this is a feature and not a bug in terms of what this is. They can certainly get better at it, but there are physical limitations that are going to make it hard for them against a number of teams to really secure defensive rebounds. And what you saw, it felt like in the last game, I know you touched on it, and it's been other games where you get the big guys blocking out and then one of the guards is going to get the ball. And you didn't really see that tonight, where in some of the prior games, Enright really came in to get rebounds. I haven't looked at the stats were pretty wonky at various points during the game, so I'm not sure how much I trust whatever I'm going to see on here. But generally speaking, I guess Conroy ended up with 6, so you had some guard rebounding there. But I just didn't feel like that was when they've been the most effective blocking people off the glasses. Let the bigger guys go and seal people off, and somebody else goes to get it. It just felt like nobody went to get it tonight during some of those stretches.
When you look at the second half, I mean, obviously the headline story of the second half is Tucker DeVries scoring 17 points in 16 minutes, hitting 3 threes, the one guy who was really able to make shots. But I think, there's a couple stats that really kind of tell the story, Andy. One is Indiana gets to the free throw line 18 times. And obviously some of that is just kind of end of game stuff, but contrast that with 7 free throws in the first half. So there was just much more aggression, cutting, getting into the basket. And then, look, Sam Alexis plays 13 minutes in the second half and is plus 16. Reed Bailey plays 7 minutes and is minus 12. And I don't think that plus minus stat always tells a story, but I think in this case, it really matches the eye test where, Reed Bailey, was just struggling with some of that length and athleticism, giving up rebounds. And Sam Alexis came in and I thought really set a tone. His numbers were, 4 points, 5 boards, 1 block. They don't really jump off the page at you. But when you watch the game, there was one play in particular where he, had a big block out and got, had some emotion, which you hadn't seen really from Indiana. And I just thought that, what he brought really, kind of helped Indiana solidify things in the second half. What else, Andy, did you see kind of in the second half that helped Indiana? Even though, look, they outscored Lindenwood by 16 in the first half, only outscored them ultimately by 4 in the second half. I think, if my math is correct. 39-35.
Yeah.
But for portions of the second half, it really felt like they played so much better in stretches.
Yeah, they dug themselves a 10-0 hole at the beginning of the second half. So from that point forward, outscored them by 14, but those points still count. I think the free throws were big. It really kind of stemmed the tide a bit there when things were going sideways. That stretch that I mentioned in the opening, the first 6 points of those 20 were all at the free throw line, with Alexis making 4 and Dorn getting there for a couple. And even 2 possessions later, DeVries hits 2. So you got 8 of the first 11 points of that run came at the free throw line. And I thought it at least allowed them to settle down a little bit, see the ball go through the basket, and was able to give guys a little bit more confidence. The other number that really stands out, 7 turnovers in the first half, 1 in the second. The assist ratio wasn't as good in the second half, 6 assists on 11 makes compared to what we've seen, but only having 1 turnover in that second half was huge, where you're at least getting scoring opportunities and taking better care of the ball. So still didn't shoot it all that well from the field in the second half, only 38%. So the free throws papered over that a little bit from a total point standpoint. But that really seemed like is what settled them down. DeVries goes nuts for a few minutes, and then it was just kind of I think it got up maybe to 24. I think at its highest point was the lead. So played relatively even from there, a little sloppy at the end, missed a couple free throws there, but that seemed to be what, once they got things corrected defensively and played with some more intensity on that, and that the free throws were huge and seemed to be the thing that settled them down.
Coach, what stood out the most to you from the second half?
Well, there's no excuse to give up a 10-0 run to start the half. In any ball game, right? And And then at 16:42, coach takes a timeout, and then Indiana goes on 11-0 run and just cleans up that mess. And so the point of emphasis is let's not do that. Like let's play basketball the right way for as many of the 40 minutes as possible. Right?
You make it sound so simple, Coach.
Well, it is. It is. Like you saw one timeout. Tucker was reading the riot act. So, there's a good question in there that just came up. Were they withholding plays the last two games and causing the disconnect? That's what I meant when I talked about the first half. I think they were playing motion and their concepts and not doing things. And coach said, hey, I got to call a few things. In that run, they started back cutting. I don't know that they hit every shot, but they made some back cuts. There was a nice little play that they run where they run some motion to the right, bring it back to the left, and then spin and hit a back cut. So they were told to quit standing and make some cuts and move. And then what happens then? The defense fouls. And at 13:48, that's when the bonus, already in the bonus, and you get to the free throw line, you see the ball go in, you can relax a little bit. And teams always play better when the basketball's going in. If you had the recipe for teams playing well when they're not shooting, you'd be, better than John Wooden, I think, because kids get down when they don't make baskets and make shots. And so you've got to improve on that end. And I didn't see that problem with Indiana because I thought they played really good defense. But the other thing is shot making. I think it was Andy, you texted in the group, shot making is fun. We have to learn, and I have to learn to watch a team that is reliant on shooting for their runs, because you're going to miss 5 in a row, and next thing you know, it's an 8-point game, and you're all mad at the 16:42 line, and you're cussing at the TV, and then all of a sudden you bank in a 3 at the 10-minute mark, and you're up 24. Because when you can shoot, it's the math problem, Jerod, that you've talked about. You can make up deficits quick. You can give up runs quick because you miss 2 or 3. I have to relearn how to watch good basketball because my blood pressure got real high there at 16:42, and then next thing you know, the bank 3 went in, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. So when you have a team that relies on shooting, you're going to have off nights, you're going to have off moments within the game. Stay with it, everybody, because 2 or 3 shots going in, and next thing you know, you are on a 9-0, 10-0 run. And so that was the biggest thing from the second half was I've got to learn how to watch this team and not need, my blood pressure cuff, too early. Because I think this team can shoot its way out of a bad stretch, and I thought you saw that tonight, which is a positive that I'm going to take away.
It is nice to have spurtability again on offense, which is what shooting and having multiple shooters can do for you. And hold that thought because we're going to talk a little bit more about it here coming up. All right. Coming up, as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 20-point victory over Lindenwood, we'll point out our haul of the moment from today's game, and then we'll share a few stat sheet stories as well. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hi, this is Jawan Morgan. What's the only thing better than getting IU's first triple-double in 47 years? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
All righty, thank you, Jawan. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with the coach, Brian Tonsoni, and Andy Bottoms. And gentlemen, it is time for today's Hall of a Moment, key moments that made a difference in the game. So I want to linger on that stretch from Tucker DeVries in the second half where he makes a three-pointer, hits a couple free throws, hits another jumper, makes 2 more three-pointers. And, what really stood out to me, Andy, in that stretch was just kind of the variety of the shots. One, I think, was a turnaround. One, I think he was over on the left wing, and his defender just left him, and he kind of took a second, steadied himself, made the shot. And, we've talked about this before on the show. You've got shooters and you've got shot makers, and I think Tucker DeVries is both. Like if you just give him a nice wide open catch and shoot three-pointer, he can make it, but he can also create and make tough shots. And we haven't had many guys like that, recently. I think, we've had some guys that can maybe do one or both or could do it in spurts. And Tucker's really the one guy who game to game, you can kind of rely on him to make the open ones and make the tough ones. I know I saw someone in the chat kind of bemoaning the fact that Tucker was taking some of those turnaround jumpers. look, not all shots are created equal across players. That would be a bad shot for most players. I think for a guy like Tucker DeVries, you trust him and you trust his shot selection, his ability to make those shots. And it's just been so few and far between. It's really fun to watch. And you see in that stretch why it's so important. Indiana was up by 14, when he went on that. It was kind of the end of that big run in the second half. But that really helped kind of push the lead out to where it felt like, okay, this game is shut. It really kind of felt like that shut the door. So just having that shot making ability, number one, it can help bail you out of some tough possessions sometimes. And again, it's just something that's nice to be able to rely on offensively. And to your point, Coach, we kind of have to recalibrate our expectations a little bit when we have a guy like that. And Andy, let me get your reaction to that before we talk about something else.
He hit a couple off balance ones as well. I think the first basket of the game, he was falling away a little bit. There was another one, I think, during that stretch where he got hot off the inbounds play that he hit kind of in the corner, a little off balance. And so I think, some of that, Sean Morris was like, oh, he's not getting his feet squared up. And like, that's true. But he also has proven he can make some of those shots where he's fallen in different ways. So I think it's probably another thing to get used to in that regard. But yeah, I thought he, took really what the defense gave him at times and tried to work in the post a little bit, which can open up passing for him to other guys if they want to, collapse on him. And so, yeah, I just thought, his ability to score from different places on the floor gives the offense some flexibility that is definitely nice to have. And he's got the size where even from the outside, he can shoot over guys. And I think what you see from him in addition to that is the leadership component of, Coach talked about, he was kind of reading everybody the riot act. And then one of the plays that I, had in mind is Wilkerson finally hits that three in the second half. Well, it was DeVries who could have very easily taken the shot, who had been absolutely on fire, and he just shovels it over to him to get him an open shot. And he actually made one and, put a little pep back in his step after really struggling. So just continued unselfish play from him and kind of recognizing what other guys on the team may need from him and may need in the game at a given time. So he's just been, I'd watched him some at previous stops, but being able to watch him kind of game in, game out, some of the little things he does is just a really impressive player.
Well, you mentioned Sean Morris. If you were playing Sean Morris bingo tonight, you really filled up your card quickly. I mean, you got the get your feet set. He was talking about Lamar Wilkerson pulling the string, not holding the follow through, cutting. Yeah. Like Sean Morris playing the classics, and added an awkward comment about Sidney Sweeney. So very.
I missed that one. I missed that one. Yeah, he had.
Is that Sidney Sweeney I see down there? I think that's what it was said. The fathead.
I don't know who the play-by-play guy was, but it was great. He was like. He made some comment about it, and then Sean Morris is like, well, Sidney Sweeney's like, yeah, I'm not dead. And the guy goes, well, not yet. I just want to credit that guy because that was a great comment.
There was some quintessential, did the Santa Claus Indiana came up, did exactly what you'd think Sean Morris would do in that scenario. So, time goes on, but some things stay the same.
We've just been with him so long, like it doesn't. I'm just kind of on board with Sean Morris now. I enjoy the experience. I lean into it because it's just been the same thing for 20 years.
Yeah, we've aged into the dad jokes, Jerod. I think is really at this point where we're at.
You're right. That's absolutely what has happened. Coach, you're a hall of a moment for this game.
How about Sam Alexis tonight? I wrote down 1348. His two-handed rebound set the tone. Like, we're not going to give up rebounds anymore. We're going to go get it and snatch it with two hands. I thought that was awesome. But he had blocks all night long too. It's very active at changing shots at the rim. I think that's going to be needed. But it's little things. It's little things like that I think that I take away in a game tonight that wasn't as fun to watch or as pleasing to watch. There are things that you can get excited about. One is Sam Alexis' play. I just think, he's not a dominant center by any means, but he is what Indiana has, and I think he is going to be a key if we can play against some of these teams with bigger and more athletic lineups. He's going to have to be a guy that continues to get his rebounds. But that sent a signal at 13:48. I mentioned earlier too, We all get caught up in the shots going in and points and those offensive statistics, but I was really pleased that Wilkerson was playing really hard on the defensive end and grabbed a couple rebounds and tipped the ball and was really active. He wasn't watching. After the first half that he had and the game that he had, he could have really taken off the defensive end. Those are things that Coach DeVries is going to point out as well within the game. How do you handle that adversity within the game? Because it's going to happen, and Indiana's going to lose and not play well. How do you bounce back? Well, Lamar was given everything he had on a night where he couldn't hit anything, and you saw that in the relief when he finally did hit that three. So those are a couple moments that stood out to me.
Yeah, for me, just a couple things with Enright. Drew a couple offensive fouls. I think both of them were in the first half, trying to fight around ball screens, things like that. And there was a possession. He ended up getting a foul on it, which probably was a foul, but he had just played great defense and the team really had for probably about 30 seconds. And then toward the end of the shot clock, he bumps somebody and gets one. And he just continues to, I keep going back to one of the quotes that DeVries said. Is like, people may not get him right now, but they're going to really love what he does by the end of the season. And I think you just see bits and pieces of that. Hitting that corner three was great for him, because I think, one of the things in watching him, and Coach, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Like, how do you handle running offense with a guy who really doesn't want to shoot? People are going to leave him. I think they're going to allow him to take those shots, and he probably has to take enough to keep people honest. But like, what's the way to make offense function when you have a guy out there who really doesn't mean that he can't. That's just not what he's kind of choosing to do. How do you coach or do something around that, even though I know it's not really thought of as doing something around that as a coach, but how do you handle that, and what might they be able to do as other teams really try to maybe take advantage of that?
Well, again, this is why you play games like this. He hits a three, right? And he's now hit 2 threes. You've got to have him see the ball go in if he is left open, because then you take a shot and you don't need him to hit 4 or 5 like you have the other shooters. And when Dorn gets in there, he's going to be another shooter. So you don't need him to shoot. So you play games like this so you can get guys on the floor. You can get Dorn back in and get him 15 minutes. I see people complaining about, why are we playing this game? Because you got to build this team. It's not just every game. You got to have a macro look at things if you're really serious about evaluating the basketball program. But what you do, to your question, is make him a screener. Like, if you're going to play off of him, the good thing about Enright is he's a point guard. So you got to put pressure on the ball, or he's going to run the offense the way Indiana wants it. So you've got to guard him. But when he cuts through, if you sag off and let him have that, have him screen for your shooters, because there's no help. Part of the problem in the first half was they were switching up on the ball screens or those hands off on the wings where Indiana was able to throw it back and get threes. They were trapping and getting up. But if you're playing off of a player, a lot of times with the big, if you don't think a big can shoot, and one of the advantages of our bigs as we rue the rebounding is Reed Bailey can hit a three. Alexis can pass out there. Like, you're going to sag off in the lane with 7'6" Mara or something at Michigan and not have him guard. We're going to pull him out from the rim. You have those things. So it's always good. If you don't guard one of my players, I'm going to have him screen for the better players, and there's no help. And if you set solid screens and you cut well, then Enright can be, that type of player. But I would encourage Enright to take open threes. Continue to run the offense. And then what he brings on the defensive end is just so vital. Like, he is just a pest. I mean, I just watch him. He just pisses off everyone just by how he plays, right? You're 6
nice to have one of those guys.
You got shaggy hair. You look like you belong at the Hyper instead of in Assembly Hall. And you're just breathing down everyone's face all the time. And that's the other thing that I got to learn too, is like, it's cumulative. Like, when you Connerway and Enright, and if you get Drake and some of those guys in, and you just constantly put pressure on these guys, and you're going over screens like Enright does, at some point you're like, dude, just give me a break, and it wears on you. And I think that could be a way to offset some of the deficiencies that Indiana does have.
All right. Let's look at a few stat sheet stories from tonight's game. And as we go inside the numbers, this segment brought to you by Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chat Mob Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or by visiting jacksonhewitt.com. I mean, obviously the headline number that everyone's going to look at is Indiana gave up 48 rebounds to Lindenwood while only getting 44 of their own. And maybe we can just linger on the fact that there were, 92 rebounds in this game, because there was a lot of missed shots tonight. Indiana shoots 38% from the field overall, not good. But when your opponent shoots 25%, you can get away with it. So Coach, as you kind of look at that, Indiana obviously able to offset, the rebounding numbers by holding Lindenwood to 25%, and also Lindenwood kind of held themselves to 25% with some poor shot making. But still, anytime you can do that to a Division I team, your defense has to be doing something right.
Yeah. And like I said, I thought first shot defense was pretty good. I love the strategy of not giving up threes, right? So you're going to look bad at some point with a guy hitting a pull-up jumper and we get Shafino'd ourselves by some kid, hitting for 38 one day at the elbow, right? You're going to do that, right? So again, that's a misunderstanding too that we have as fans. You have a strategy. You're going to take one thing away, two things away. You're going to try to take a player away, do something else. And all of a sudden, the fourth player goes off for 20, and you get beat. And then the coach didn't have a strategy, right? So I like the strategy of going over the ball screens, going over the stuff, and forcing them into the lane. We just got to have good chase, contest, and then you've got to crack down on the blockouts. I think what Indiana does is they get out of position a little bit, and if you're not locked in, that's when you don't crack down and go after the rebound on those hard misses. But you'll see good teams. The contested two, I don't care how talented you are, is not a good shot. It just isn't. You'll have your Shafino nights, but it wasn't good for Shafino either. Not the way the game of basketball is being played right now. It is rim and three and dunk and rebound, and you have to do that. So I think that I thought our defense was really good. And again, they have to make up for stuff. You're absolutely right. By shooting, they can't have an off night shooting with their rebounding and really be as competitive as they want to be. That's just the makeup of this team right now.
The other thing, Andy, that was interesting, like it kind of viscerally watching the game, it felt like we missed a lot of free throws. And I think part of that is just when like the team's not playing with a lot of energy and you see a few missed free throws, it kind of, blows up in your mind. But we shot 72% from the free throw line, 18 for 25. Last time we shot 72% from the line for a season was 2017. So, even that, which felt a little worse than it's normally been, was still an improvement. What else jumped out to you from a numbers perspective?
Yeah, even in the second half, Sicily missed a couple at the end. They were 13-16. They ended up 13-18 in the second half, right at that 72% mark. But yeah, it seemed like they split a bunch, particularly early in the game. But
Conaway missed one when he might have been seeing stars after getting knocked in the head.
Yeah.
Like if this was the NFL, he might have been in concussion protocol.
He could have been, but it's basketball, so you just get up and keep playing.
Just go shoot some free throws.
Yeah, you're fine. The 92 rebounds, that's jarring. That's not good at all. And for as many offensive rebounds as IU gave up, they only got outscored by 2 in second chance points, 16-14, but they did outscore Lindenwood 11-0 on points off turnovers. And again, the assists, number wise was a little bit down from what we've seen, 13 assists on 23 makes, but still over 50% there. And compared to just 8 turnovers, like I said before, just 1 in the second half. So, the shooting numbers were ugly, as anyone would look at and see. And for Wilkerson, I know DeVries talked about, he's 4 of 16. That probably means he's got an 11 of 16 game coming. 4 of 16 was not at all close to the worst shooting line in this game. You can take your pick of the Lindenwood had one guy go 3 for 14, the other one 0 for 10. So not really.
That's Coach Tonsoni numbers.
Not really what you want. Not really what you want. But no, I kind of just some ugly numbers. I mean, they do the ugliness of the numbers tell a bit of a story for the rest of the game. I will say we talked about some of the blocks from Alexis He ends up with 5. IU's got 8 steals, but IU did get their shots blocked 7 times. And again, you kind of talk about size and finishing at the rim and some of those things that are question marks still a bit at this point for IU as you start spinning this ahead to what's this going to look like against better teams. Like that's another kind of, all right, we got to, is it driving and kicking some of those back out for threes as opposed to trying to force shots up? Is it taking different approach when you get in there, playing off 2 feet? Probably a lot of different things if you went back and look at each of the blocks, but probably not ideal to get 7 shots blocked against Lindenwood.
Another thing real quick is layups, 6 for 17. There are some missed layups in there, which shows a little bit of lack of focus, lack of concentration in this game that I think Coach will probably discuss.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing when you look at this game. It ends 73-53. If Lamar Wilkerson just has an average shooting night, it's an 80-53 game, and you're feeling a little bit better. And I also want to say, in games like this, we obviously focus on Indiana. Like, I thought Lindenwood played well. I thought they lost their spirit a little bit toward the end, after Tucker DeVries just made shot after shot, and they couldn't make shots. But I thought they had a good game plan and played hard, and that can help. When Indiana doesn't bring it, that's part of what contributes to a result that's a little bit closer. So for all the Lindenwood people who are tuning into the postgame show tonight, we tip our caps to your team for coming in and having a good night at Assembly Hall overall for most of the night, kind of, even though you couldn't make a shot, and that stinks, but that's okay. Okay, let's move on here. And coming up on the Assembly Call here in segment 3, we will hand out our awards for the game, look ahead to Indiana's upcoming opponent, plus a lingering question that we were texting about, which I think you'll all find interesting. Let's talk about that next.
What's up, y'all? It's Devontae Green giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Devontae. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms and the coach Brian Tonsoni, and it is time for our game balls presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. And at Bloom Environmental, as you know, they provide expert radon, mold, asbestos, and crawl space solutions to protect homes and improve indoor air quality. Call today for a free estimate. Mention Assembly Call and get 10% off your system. Learn more at bloomenviro.com. That's bloomenviro.com. All right, game balls. Coach, to you first.
Yeah, it's got to be Tucker DeVries for me. 25 points, 5 of 10 from 3, 6 from 6, really key in that second half to get the game back to where it should have been in the 20s. His leadership in the timeout, I think he's going to get a lot of them, obviously, and I just think that, we need Wilkerson and DeVries both to play well in the big games, and luckily we have 2 guys that can score the basketball like they can and some other players. But for me, all-around effort tonight, Tucker DeVries gets my game ball.
Andy?
Yeah, this is a pretty easy one. Definitely Tucker DeVries for me. Just that stretch really is where IU took control of the game, and the only guy who played the most minutes, but well deserved with 25, 3 and 3, and just he was the one who controlled everything from a leadership standpoint and from a production standpoint.
Yeah, no, it's DeVries. That one's easy. Let's go to the Hustle Award. Andy, you first. Who gets your Hustle Award tonight?
This one a little bit tougher, but I'm going Sam Alexis. I think Enright was the other guy who I thought about, but I think Alexis, he really came in. We talked about some of those rebounds and getting a little bit fired up there in the second half. Ends up playing 24 minutes and grabbing 10 rebounds in a game that IU really struggled on the glass. 4 blocks in that time as well. And 8 points, was 4-4 from the line, and only took three shots. I think got a dunk pretty quickly after he came in. Just thought really productive minutes from him in a game that Bailey struggled a little bit, and he stepped up and continues to really provide that spark.
Coach, Hustle Award?
Yeah, I'm going to mention a couple players, and I'll give out my hustle award. I thought early on Sisley brought it in the first half, did some really good things, hustling and diving for balls and doing things like that. He was my lead early in the game for that award. But there's, and I think I just love the way Enright and Connerway play. They're going to give Indiana all they got for the year that they're here, and I'm proud that they're Indiana Hoosiers. They have issues like everyone does in a game of basketball, but I thought those guys really laid it on the line as well tonight. But there's no doubt I'm going along with Andy. Sam Alexis tonight was fantastic with his rebound, his blocks. He had 4 blocks, 10 rebounds, a couple offensive rebounds, 4 for 4 free throw line. Really not a hustle stat, but I thought Sam Alexis, on all the other things besides shooting, which Tucker DeVries did in that run, I thought Sam Alexis also had a big hand in getting us back up to the comfortable lead that Indiana had.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that you said, Coach. A lot of guys I think brought it, especially in the second half after kind of a lackluster start. But Alexis was just the one who really especially with the rebounding really helped out. And that's look, I mean we are really seeing that from him as a guy off the bench who brings energy, he brings emotion. I mean, this is a guy who won a national title. Like, he knows what winning looks like, and you can see why he was part of that team, because that's what he brings game in, game out. And that's a nice segue to, Andy, the conversation that we were having via text, which I think would be interesting to talk about, after a game like tonight, where, I think you see some of the limitations of Reed Bailey. Obviously, we know what he can do offensively, but there are times, down low against bigger, more athletic guys that, he's going to struggle to get rebounds and struggle to defend. And you see the impact that Sam Alexis makes. The history that he has playing it at a higher level. And so my lingering question is, and look, with Reed Bailey, we're kind of nitpicking on him tonight because it was not a good night for him. This is still a guy who is, has the highest offensive rating among Indiana's players, using 20% or more of possessions. Very efficient, very smart offensive player, very versatile. And you can do so many things with him on offense. But as you get into better competition, I think there's going to be more of a premium on having a better athlete out there who can do some of the things that Sam Alexis can do. And so, we are still in the very nascent stages, very early stages here with a new coach. And obviously, Indiana's previous coach was very locked in with roles. If you were a starter, you were a starter, and that didn't really change much. I'm curious if we see any of that change. And Andy, if you foresee a guy like Alexis becoming a starter, and if that even matters, because he's still playing a lot of minutes and you can still mix and match those guys. But it is, to me, kind of a lingering question, because there are going to be, I think, games where you want Alexis playing 28, 29 minutes and Reed Bailey not playing as much. And so, whether it's Bailey keeps starting, but, the minutes really fluctuate, or, the starting lineup changes, or Alexis ends up playing more, I am going to be curious to see how that evolves throughout the season, because it does seem like one where there are going to be particular matchups where Bailey is really good and particular matchups where you've got to have Alexis on the court as many minutes as possible.
Yeah, like you said, I don't know that we know DeVries well enough to know how tied, how married he is to a particular lineup. I think what you have seen, though, is that he's had a pretty quick hook for Bailey if he's noticed him struggling. I think the second half he might have played 2 minutes and he was out. Tonight I know he came back in, but he went to Alexis pretty quickly, so maybe that suggests he's going to keep starting him, and kind of you can get a sense of how productive he's going to be able to be early on, and then kind of work it out from there, because it really is a question of the variety of his skills offensively and how much you need those and want those. The catch he made, they talked about that on that pick and roll in the first half, was a tough catch and finish, which was a nice athletic play by him. I think you see him be able to bring the ball up the court when he gets a rebound. You see some of the passing that he can do is a little bit different than what you get from Alexis, who's a little bit more of a, get him to the dunker spot in different situations, get him, slipping screens and being able to get to the basket that way and making shots around the rim. But certainly from a defensive rebounding standpoint, Alexis has separated himself a bit in that regard. And so if it's a game that you're really struggling in that area and you need him, I think you're going to find the balance of the minutes tilt a little bit toward him, where tonight it was, I think he had 24 and Bailey had 16. I don't think you're going to find them playing together a whole lot unless somebody's in foul trouble. So I think it just kind of becomes, is it a, 25, it might be a 25-15 split on minutes most nights. It's just a matter of who's getting it as you go through and do that. And I think there's some matchups where you're going to have to use Bailey to try to take advantage of that, because against some of the guys you're going to see in the Big Ten, Alexis is going to be overmatched physically from a size perspective. And so how much is that going to be a factor? He's been phenomenal. I think he's been far better than anyone would have anticipated coming into the season. So it's in some ways a good thing that it's a worthy conversation to even have at this point. But I would assume in the short term sticks with that. But like I said, I think what is somewhat encouraging is the quick hook that he's had, where the recognition of, I got to make a change because this isn't working, versus trying to kind of blindly write it out and see what happens.
Man, how good was that Florida team last year? He played 17.8% of the minutes. He's a good player.
Their front court is ridiculously loaded. I think it was a situation where, he's transferring up in there, and you probably don't know how good some of the other guys are. And maybe Todd Golden didn't know how good some of the guys were, but you look up at the end of that and it's like, how the hell would anybody else get minutes on there, no matter how good they were? So,
I'll take it a step further, Jerod, too. I wonder if you'll see some two big lineups, and if that depends on getting the Harris kid back, where you have some rotation in there, to combat some of the bigger lineups that you might see once you get into Big Ten play. Does that fit what DeVries wants to do offensively and play Tucker DeVries at the 3? Right now, defensively, they're just walling up inside. There is a little bit of post-digging and post-doubling. But again, the reason you schedule these games is so that you can see things that you're good at and see things that you're weak at. And so coach is going to go back and say, can we guard one-on-one in the lane? I think Tucker struggles against 4s who can leap up and score. Baby Hook was scored on in the last couple of games. They bully balled Tucker DeVries into the post. Well, we need to see what coach is going to do in response to that. Is he going to keep playing Tucker at the 4? If he is, and people are going to take advantage of that post-up defense, are you going to start running doubles? And then what are the rotations? We've been able to play with this schedule man up on your own. And that's why you schedule these things. So now you know what your guys can do, what your guys can't do. And as you go to the Kansas State, and now you can perform a better you could put together a scouting plan based on things that you've seen in film, seen over 5 games, only one being a power 4. So I wonder if they're going to play at the same time, and you have Bailey playing more of the 4 that way on defense and a little bit on offense. Is that in the bag of tricks that Coach DeVries has? But I think that depends on the Harris kid coming back to be able to spell. He's 6'8". He's not huge, I believe, but he is more of a 4 and a 5. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Or if you're going to play him, I do think you're right. You're going to see Alexis in for the physicality when needed. But we're going to see a lot more offense, and we're going to see a lot more defense as we start getting into these teams that you need to do different things. And that's part of the results-based stuff, too, where you can't look at analytics and KenPom and say, oh, Indiana's good, Indiana's bad. Like, we don't know what the strategy is. You're going to win these 2 games, so you're going to not play the most, the incredible defense or your top-level defense, those types of things. But I think we've learned a little bit about the post play that's a little bit concerning, and I think I at least, and I don't know how everyone else is, but I have trust in DeVries to at least try to figure it out, to give it a shot, and not keep doing the same thing over and over again, and time will tell.
Other lingering question. A few people must have gotten here late. They're wondering where Ryan is. Greg says, was Ryan's rant the 6:00 p.m. Eastern time tip? That is someone who knows the show. Andy, as you called that out, so he's probably just getting back from his Diet Coke work break. And then Russell says, Ryan, that's his name. Where is he, and why is he not making an appearance? Ryan is at Disneyland, as we said earlier in the show. He said he had a goal to get his picture taken with every Disney princess. And so he is out there doing that right now, but skipping the Lindenwood game. He did send in a few texts, so he was clearly tracking the game while it was going on. Okay, last thing here. Let's look ahead. Indiana obviously has played one halfway decent team in Marquette, won that game 100-77. Marquette currently 68th in KenPom. We have another game against a top 70 team coming up against Kansas State on Tuesday. Andy or Coach, does either one of you have any insight on Kansas State that can give us a little mini preview of what to expect in this one?
Coach put some stuff in the run sheet, so I'll let him go first, and then I can add maybe a couple things.
Yeah, they're playing tonight against Mississippi State, so I think that'll tell us a lot. They're 4-0 coming into today. The PJ Haggerty kid has been like 4 schools, I think, and is a top 50 top player. That's the player to watch out for. They shoot a lot of threes. I did just quick research. They shoot 45% from range and a pretty good volume too. So how Indiana guards the 3-point line will be key. Long rebounds are going to happen in that situation too. So pursuit of the basketball, guard rebounding is going to be key, but they can score it. And Indiana's going to need to be able to play with that intensity on offense, that ball movement and shooting. Ken Palm currently has this as a 9-point favorite. That was before tonight's action. So depending on what Kansas State does in Indiana, Indiana should be favored. It's at Assembly Hall. I think Indiana should take care of business, but it's going to be a tight effort and need to play a lot better than what they did the last 2 games, in my opinion.
Yeah, a couple of things that stand out. Yeah, Haggerty, he transferred from Memphis that most recently, was a really good player. He was the guy that they threw tons of money at this year, like they did with Coleman Hawkins a year ago. So they got a number of transfers. A couple of things statistically, they play their adjusted tempo is top 40 in the country, so it's going to be fast paced. They've scored in the 90s 3 of the games and just won only by a point on Monday against Tulsa. So they had a couple close games, barely beat Cal, barely beat Tulsa at home. But it should be an up and down game if it's the way that they want it to be, which may lead to some open shots for IU in transition, some different things like that, but also important for IU to get back defensively as you look at it that way. And yeah, like Coach said, really the shooting is what they do well. 45% almost 46% from 3, 60% on 2. So their effective field goal percentage is top 10. They do turn it over, and they're decent on the offensive glass. So everybody, I'm sure, will sleep well knowing that, but don't really do anything don't rank particularly highly in any one area defensively. So it does feel like if IU's sharp on that end, should be able to get shots as they go through in that regard. So, but yeah, a few different guys to look at. Nate Johnson, he's an Akron transfer. He's shooting almost 60% from 3. I think they had another guy transferred from Monmouth who's shooting pretty well from 3 as well. So a lot of transfers has kind of been the case with Jerome Tang since he got there, but certainly a step up in competition. I think I won't say all the shine is off the Marquette win, but they've not played well. They've lost to anybody decent that they've played, albeit not by as much as IU did, but I watched a little bit of their game the other night. They lost to Dayton at home, and they had lost to, I think, Maryland, who got all they could handle from Mount St. Mary's last night. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. That win is not aging as well as I think maybe people had hoped. Not that they can't turn it around, but it'll be another good test. And I think one probably in contrast to what we've seen these last couple games, I think IU will be up for, and I think that hopefully play with a different level of intensity and enthusiasm as Tucker DeVries said.
Justin says Ryan is the princess.
That might be the chat mob entry of the century. That is beautiful. Well played.
So I'm gonna do my last call first because I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Because I've seen some people bemoaning the attendance at the game. Apparently Fish might have said something about it on the radio. I don't know what the context of that was, but there weren't a lot of people there. I could not be less concerned about attendance at early season men's basketball games right now. It's been a topic in the past sometimes, but the way that I look at it right now is, why do people go to games, right? Travel, fight through traffic, especially for a 5:00 start on a weekday. You've got to have 2 things. You've got to have trust in the team that it's going to be worth your time, and excitement that it's going to be a good time, right? If you look at all the Indiana sports right now, Indiana basketball may be about as low as any of them in terms of trust and excitement in recent past. And that's not a reflection of Darren DeVries or this team. It's just a reflection of the last decade of Indiana basketball. Look what Indiana football has done. Look where women's basketball is. Look where soccer is. Look at where volleyball is right now. And so this is Indiana. Support for basketball is going to be there when when fans trust their team and when they know that there's going to be an exciting product on the floor and exciting games. And we haven't given anybody that with the home schedule yet. So I am not at all concerned about this. And I think this team over time, even though they have issues and there's going to be matchups that we're just, I think there's just going to be some bad matchups that we're going to really struggle in unless we just go nuclear from a shooting perspective. But I still think this is going to be a team fans are really going to like and embrace. And they're going to be some big wins and the fans and the attendance will come back. But Indiana basketball has to build back trust and excitement. And that's what's going to get fans back. But it's not just going to come overnight. And it's not just going to be one of those things where every season fans just trust and are ready to be there and pack the thing with 17,000 fans every single game. This is kind of a reset for Indiana basketball in a lot of ways. And I think part of that is going to be a little bit of a journey to get fans, back in the arena on a night in, night out basis. So just not concerned about it at all. I think it'll turn around as the season goes on. So, I mean, to me, just not even really a storyline, worth talking much about, except just to address, kind of some of the comments that I've seen tonight. That's my final comment. Coach, kick it to you.
Yeah, I'll just real quick. I think also the start times matter. The matchups and the start times matter. Right now, Indianapolis is hard to get through. When I go down for a 7:00 game, I like to get there by 5:30, and I'm always delayed getting through just normal traffic, no accident, no nothing and that's at 4:30, right? So, when a lot of your fans are in the Indy area, despite the new highway and expressway, it's shocking to me that time period is really tough. That's part of the reason I didn't go down tonight is there's no way I was going to get there on time from Delphi. I think that's part of it. And the basketball program has, I think Jen said it in the chat, it's got to earn that trust back again. I think, again, various opinions about what happened over the last 4 years, but I can tell you this. Some of the most diehard people need to see things again before they give up everything in a Thursday night to go in, combine that with winning. But, yeah, not worried about it. I think we are headed into a good place. We're not where we're going to be. That's another thing I would encourage a lot of us in here who struggle with the game like tonight and get frustrated with the game like tonight. Like, I think we're headed in the right direction, and you can disagree with me on that, but – shooting is fun, and I think the adjustments and things like that are fun. I'm not worried about it either.
Yeah, I think from my perspective on that, I think that the start time had a lot to do with it. But if you're going to have a triple header on the Big Ten Network, that's when you got to start because everybody wants to watch USC play at 10:00. Traditional Big Ten basketball power USC. I mean, it is what it is. What are you going to do? So I do think that was as much of it as anything. And I do think that the trust factor is there. And I think that's starting to build and being able to see the team play well and play a more enjoyable brand of basketball. But I think Galen and Scott have talked about this a while. Like if you look back at the last, 20 plus years of IU basketball, the kinds of experiences that we had that led us to do this show for as long as we have are not experiences that other people have had. And it's not as, we probably don't want to admit that at times, but it's not as ingrained in in kind of what people are prioritizing to do as it once was for us. And I guess still is, since we're also sitting here talking about it. But I just think that's a difference that it's sometimes hard to come to grips with. And I think some of that has to do with what other sports are doing at the school. But I think a lot of it just is the return on investment of time for this program in recent years has not been very good.
I tell you what, though, there's some 11 and 12-year-old IU football fans that don't know this yet, but they got a post-game show in their future.
Yeah,
years down the road.
Yeah, I don't know. They haven't been through it, but yeah, I mean, I think for the game itself, it was like we said. I think they turned it on when they needed to. Really had some sluggish, lackluster moments at times, and it's. I think some of the pacing of the schedule becomes important because if you got another one of these kinds of games coming up. I think it's going to be a challenge. I think it's good timing that they have another major conference game to kind of get amped up for, get ready for before the Thanksgiving break, and then be able to do that. Then you settle back in a bit. Although Bethune-Cookman, who they play after that, has given people some trouble, and might be an interesting team. But I think that'll be good. I think the timing of playing another major conference team is going to be critical, and hopefully we see more of that. Like I said, as Tucker DeVries put it, energy and enthusiasm that they're going to need to survive. They need things like that to overcome certain elements that they lack as you look at that. And so it'll be a good test, and another good opportunity defensively to be really disruptive for a team that wants to play fast, has some talented guards. What can Enright, Connerway, Wilkerson do to be disruptive in that regard is what I'll be looking for, because I think offensively they should be able to hopefully get back on track in a maybe a little bit more wide open game than what this one proved to be.
All right, Coach, last call.
Yeah, just real quick. The last two games haven't necessarily gone the way all of us wanted to. Shooting wasn't great, but again, I think look at the holistic approach to this team. It's a new brand of basketball that involves modern basketball shooting. You're going to have off nights. You're going to have good nights. This team has shown resiliency. It was tonight, giving up that 10-0 run and fought their way back to a 20-point victory. It could have been even more if they closed up each half better. So, again, not telling people how to fan. You can dislike this team because they didn't play well against the Lindenwood, or you can like them because it is exciting, and I think it's headed in the right direction. Like I said, learn how to watch a team that shoots the three ball. You're going to love it at times. You're going to really be frustrated with it, but I'm having fun. Indiana's 5-0, and you never give back a victory, right? And these wins are getting closer to the expected. Even though 32 and we only win by 20, it doesn't kill the metrics. Tonight was another step where this team can learn a little bit more. I think Kansas State game is huge for the end of the season, where we want this team to be.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's close things up here. That'll do it for this edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, if you want to be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to the Back Home Network YouTube channel, which you can still get to at youtube.com/assemblycall. Don't forget to go to substack.assemblycall.com. You can get on our free email newsletter. Special thank you, as always, to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thank you to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logo. And thank you, as always, for listening. We'll be back Tuesday after the Kansas State game to talk IU hoops again with you once again. Until then,
take it from me, Yogi Ferrell. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
I think they've gotten enough show. Time has proven me right on virtually nothing. Yo, this is Sneep Dio Double Dizzle. Come on, dude.
Just thought we should get a little Ryan flavor in here.
We have a better chance of a Disney princess hosting the show than Ryan ever hosting the show. Just saying, man. Justin, if you're still here.
You're not wrong.
I haven't listened to this in a while. I don't know what this soundbite is, but I'm just going to play.
Boy.
It. It's called Ryan bragging montage.
Oh boy.
Oh geez.
How long does this go?
I pretty much have an opinion on everything. My apartment complex has a bowling alley in it. 4 separate people texted me. I have to exercise. I wrote about it a little bit this week. I cleaned up every single crumb. I got to do a 45-minute workout. I may stop by tonight. I'm working. I have to do the radio show. I was flying to Connecticut. I've stayed everywhere in that damn town. I'm like a jazz musician. I'm just going to go. I got in touch with some people at Duke. I've never changed a diaper in my life. I have friends who are like, hey, man, I'm taking the day off from work to watch games. I have more UCLA fan friends now on Twitter than I've ever had in my life. I love them all, by the way. This happened legitimately 3 feet from me. I know the story. I don't think the audience does, though. I certainly could curse. I was sitting on the floor right there. I could see everything that was going on. I'm going to trademark fake news. I wrote about it a little bit this week. I was at that game on the floor. Cough to the side or something. I do it all the time. I had one show where I had Skype shut off pretty much the entire time. I was a USC football fan because I was friends with some of the players when I went there. I went to the national championship. I went to the Final Four when it was in Indianapolis in 2015. I'm stuck in my house all day because I work from home. I'm going to go on vacation that week. I will be at Petco Park.
Well, I've been saying all year that I've been hearing out of Bloomington that Noah was on a 2-year plan.
I don't know why, but I just felt that. If you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. You can be wrong. That's fine.
Oh gosh. I haven't looked at these soundbites in a while. That's great. Okay, well, that was a good
covered a lot of ground there, so that's good.
Yeah, really did. Okay, well, come back, Ryan. We need you here. Enjoy yourself.
Hey, it's going to take everything next time I'm on with him not to call him Princess. You're right, Princess.
There's no chance he's going to listen to this episode, and he's not going to have any idea.
No
joke.
I want to say, should I call you Shot Doctor or Princess?
Be like, what? Okay. Well,
on that note,
knocking at my door, ready to go to bed. So I'll see you guys. We'll see y'all on Tuesday.
Good night. See ya.
Okay.